Good evening. My name is Olesya Khromeychuk, and I'm the director of the Ukrainian Institute London. It's a real honor for me to welcome all of you tonight on behalf of three co-organizing institutions, the Ukrainian Institute London, Insulate Ukraine, and you'll hear from its founder, Harry Blakiston Houston, at the end of the evening, and the Royal Society of Arts. We are gathered here in this absolutely remarkable space at the RSA, which has been a center for ideas and innovation for more than 270 years. And as a fellow of the RSA, when I come here, I feel a sense of pride for its longevity. But as a Ukrainian, I find myself also experiencing a certain anxiety when I'm here. The space exists in a landscape that has enjoyed a long tradition of statehood, and at least relative institutional stability. Conditions that allow organizations to grow and to thrive and to endure. In contrast, there are parts of the world where imperial violence has repeatedly disrupted continuity, eroded institutional memory, and stifled development. In these places, resilience, both individual and institutional, is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. It is there that grassroots organizations and civil society step in to fill the gaps left by the absence of long-established institutions. Ukraine is one such country, and the Center for Civil Liberties is one such organization. The Center for Civil Liberties is the organization that is led by our tonight's speaker. Founded in 2007, the center played a key role in providing legal support for protesters during the Revolution of Dignity in 2013-2014. And from the moment Russia began its aggression in Crimea and in eastern Ukraine in 2014, it has been documenting human rights violations there. And since the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, it has worked tirelessly to record Russia's war crimes perpetrated in Ukraine. That same year, the Center for Civil Liberties was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Today, even for those of us fortunate enough to work within relatively stable institutional frameworks, whether that's in human rights, in social justice, in public diplomacy, and public education, continuity can no longer be taken for granted. If we are serious about building solidarity in safeguarding democratic values, we must place the voice of those with experiential knowledge of resilience at the center of our conversations. We must learn from them. At the Ukrainian Institute London, a UK-based independent charity, we know only too well the challenges of sustaining institutional work without guaranteed continuity. And while we're on this subject, may I take a moment to warmly invite you all to come to our next fundraiser on the 25th of June. You have postcards on your seats with further information. And those of you who are not with us in the room, you can find the information on our website. Our mission at the UIL is to create platforms for equal dialogue, for mutual learning, and for solidarity building. And I'm absolutely delighted to see so many of you join us here at RSA House and online to embrace this opportunity to learn from Ukraine, especially when it comes to the pursuit of global justice. And it is my absolute honor and pleasure to welcome our speaker, Oleksandra Matviichuk, human rights lawyer and the head of the Center for Civil Liberties. We'll hear from Oleksandra, and then she'll be joined in conversation with Gillian Tett, journalist, author, and provost of King's College, Cambridge. Oleksandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor. It's a huge honor for me to address to this distinguished audience. As Olesya rightly mentioned, there are a lot of things which has no limitation in national borders, and human solidarity is one of such things. So let me start with and to express my sincere condolences with this tragedy of plane crash, which happened today. I am a human rights lawyer, and I'm applying the law to defend people and human dignity for many years. But now, I, as other Ukrainian colleagues, we find ourselves in a situation when the law doesn't work. Because Russia has launched the war of aggression against Ukraine. Russian troops deliberately shelling residential buildings, schools, churches, museums, and hospitals. They're attacking evacuation corridors. They're torturing people in filtration camps. They're forcibly taking Ukrainian children to Russia. They ban Ukrainian language and culture. They're abducting, robbing, raping, and killing civilians in the occupied territories. And the entire UN system of peace and security can't stop this. When large-scale war started, we faced with enormous amount of human rights violations. And that is why we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions. We built a national network of local documentators and covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And working together, we jointly documented more than 88,000 episodes of war crimes. 88,000, it's an enormous amount. But still, it's just a tip of iceberg, because Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia deliberately inflicts enormous pain and suffering to Ukrainian civilians in order to break people's resistance and occupy the country. While this war turns people into the numbers, what we are literally doing, we are returning people their names. Because people are not numbers, and life of each person matters. Let me share with you one story from our database. This is a story of 10-year-old boy Andriy from the city Brovary near Kiev. When large-scale war started, the Russians began to bombarding Ukrainian cities, and his parents did what every parents would do in such a situation. They took their son, some documents, some hastily gathered belongings to drive away from this dangerous zone that Russian army was storming. But unfortunately, on the road, they faced with a line of Russian tanks. And one of them hit civilian car and ran over the civilian car. Andriy told that his father was dead, but his mother was alive because they sit together in the back seat and his mother speaks to him. In several seconds, someone forcibly took the boy from the car and threw him to the road, and Russians hit the gas tank of the civilian car again. And you understand what's happened. This 10-year-old boy told to my colleague how his mother burned alive on his own eyes in front of him. There is no justification for Russia's actions. There is no legitimate reason in doing such things. There is also no military necessity in it. Russians have done such horrible things only because they could. All this hell, which we now face in Ukraine, it's result of total impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Russian troops committed horrible crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. They believe they can do whatever they want. This tradition of impunity has a very long history. while Nazi war criminals were tried after Nazi regime had collapsed, Soviet Gulag was never condemned or punished. So no surprise that while the whole world commemorates the end of the Second World War with a slogan, "Never again," Russians, they celebrate the war with a slogan, "We can repeat." But I think the situation is even serious. I think that this collapse of international order, which is based on UN Charter, international law, which is going on our eyes, has a one clear root. We all start to perceive the slogan "Never again" differently. For Ukrainians, never again means we will never again allow evil to dominate. We will fight with evil. We will say never again to concentration camp, to erosion of someone's identity, to physical extermination of entire nation, to murder and to sexual abuse. We will fight with evil, regardless that evil is much bigger than we are. And for Ukrainians, never again is not just words. We prove it on the battlefield. But for a lot of people in democratic countries who started to take freedom and security for granted, who inherited freedom and security from their parents, who has never fought for freedom and security, who became consumers of these values, who start to consider freedom as a possibility to make a choice between different cheeses in supermarket, for those people, never again means something different. We have people who inherited democracy and freedom from their parents and who start to think in a way that never again we will fight for freedom and democracy. Never again we will risk our life, even if something provides danger for them. We will compromise with evil. We'll shake Putin's hand, build gas pipeline, do business as usual. We'll close our eyes for the illegal occupation of Crimea, which was unprecedented act after the Second World War in our part of the world. The problem is that human rights and peace are inextricably linked. And states that violate human rights provide threats not just for their own citizens, but to the peace and security in general. And the problem is, if we based our political decisions only on economic benefits, security concerns, geopolitical interests, or our own comfort, even if we benefit in the short term, we all await for catastrophe in the long term. Because Russia is empire, and empire has a center, but has no borders. Empire always tries to expand. I see it even in my human rights work. When I interviewed people who survived Russian captivity, they told me, Russians see their future like this. First, we'll occupy Ukraine, and then, together with you, we will go to conquer in other countries. And the process of forcible mobilizations, Ukrainians to Russian army, all these years is going on in occupied territories. So let me conclude. As a human rights lawyer who found myself in situation when the law doesn't work, when UN system of peace and security is not functioning properly, I still have a hope because I know one important thing. When you can't rely on the legal instruments, when you can't rely on international system of peace and security, you can still rely on people. because we get used to thinking through the categories of states and interstates organizations, but ordinary people have a much greater impact than they can even imagine. Ordinary people can change history. And that is why 3 years ago, when not just Putin, but also our international partners were confident that Ukraine has no potential to resist with such enormous opposing power, millions of Ukrainians made their choice to fight for freedom and human dignity. And very soon it became obvious that ordinary people fighting for their freedom and human dignity are stronger than even the second army in the world. And I'm here to say that despite everything, the story of Ukraine, it's a life-affirming story, because these dramatic times raise hope. Because when freedom is denied, it becomes powerfully break out through the every concrete individuals. Because hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine, but hope, it's a deep understanding that all our efforts have a huge meaning. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed for those deeply inspiring words, which show us, why you are such a powerful advocate, not just for Ukraine, but also for the cause of human decency and human rights and the power of law and democracy, which frankly are values that we all too often take for granted in the West. And I think everyone listening to you should be very, very deeply humbled by what you've said. We should also be challenged. And so the first question I want to ask you is, you've said that ordinary people are the people who we have to turn to when legal systems fail. What do you think that ordinary people in Britain, including this audience, can do to actually try and support you as you are engaged in this critically important battle?
Thank you for this question. I need a microphone?
I think it's microphone. Yeah.
Thank you for this question. I think it's a good opportunity for me to express my sincere gratitude to people in the United Kingdom. Thank you for your solidarity. Thank you for your support, that you are with us in this dramatic time of our history, in this fight for freedom and for human dignity. We know, according to all sociological polls, and just from millions of human stories, that people in the United Kingdom help Ukraine a lot. So it's a good opportunity for me to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. People can do a lot, but I'm not in a position to tell someone what they have to do. There are hundreds of methods how to be helpful, and everyone can find appropriate for them. I know that people organized some demonstrations, that people created some exhibitions, that people writing about Ukraine regularly just to keep focus. Because I remember how I told to myself in March 2022, so if Russians did this horrible thing in Bucha while the whole world is watching, what the hell is awaiting for us if we lose this attention? So you can crowdfund, you can donate, you welcome Ukrainian refugees, you can urge your government finally confiscate 300 billion Russian state frozen assets. So you can do a lot. I just want to tell that we need your help. We need your help. Sometimes people underestimate their efforts because when we face with such enormous challenge as a war, sometimes you have this feeling that everything which we are doing is so modest because it can't stop this war. But the honest answer is that there is no modest efforts in the war. All efforts matters. Let me finish with one story from my personal life. 11 years ago, millions of Ukrainians stood up their voice against pro-Russian corrupt authoritarian governments who stopped the Euro-integration process. And government responded with large-scale and systematic repressions. I was coordinator of civil initiative Euromaidan SOS. We brought up several thousands of people to provide legal assistance to persecuted protesters. We worked 24 hours per day, and it was a period when every day hundreds and hundreds of people who were beaten, arrested, tortured, accused in fabricated criminal cases passed through our care. It was very scary times because we faced with the entire state machine when criminal group Titushki cooperated with police, police cooperated with prosecutors and the courts, the former president, the former government, security service, the majority of parliament were against people. They just want to liquidate peaceful protest, even physically. And this feeling of learned helplessness started to be emerged. And in order to help people overcome this feeling, Ukrainian artists made a beautiful series of posters. And I remember one of them. It was a poster of a drop, and it was a title, "We are drop in the ocean," which means, yes, we are humans, we're not gods. Probably with our individual efforts, we can't change this war, but without our individual efforts, nothing will be changed. And even more, we are humans, and our individual efforts probably can be named as modest, but together we are ocean. Together we can change the history.
Well, thank you. That's very beautiful. And it reminds me a bit of what happened recently in Bangladesh, where they had the graffiti revolution, where students were painting, each of them small bits of graffiti on the streets, and together that reminded people that we need to keep resisting. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine is so overwhelming. You face such a horrific threat from Russia, which is betting on the idea that they will outlast everyone. 3 years on, what are the biggest challenges for ordinary Ukrainians now, in your view?
There are a lot of challenges because this war is very cruel. And as I mentioned in my introductory remark, this cruelty has a goal. My Russian human rights colleagues from Center Memorial, they wrote a report a year ago. They analyzed the Russian tactics in Chechnya, in Syria, in Ukraine, and they told, this is the same war crime playbook. And they titled this report, The Chain of Wars, Chain of Crimes, and Chain of Impunity. So we hardly work to break this chain of impunity, not just for Ukrainians, but also in order to prevent next Russian attack to the next nation. And probably the main challenge in the war is that you always live in total uncertainty. You can't plan not just your day, you can't plan your next several hours, you have no idea what will happen. You live in constant fear for your beloved ones. When I got up this morning in beautiful London, first what I start to do, I check the news. Whether or not I still have a home to return, whether or not my family and my colleague are still alive, because when we go to bed in Ukraine, we have no guarantee that we will get up next morning. The war is a lottery, and probably it will be your residential building who will be hit by Russian missiles. And the challenge is that also you see unbelievable contrasts. For one side, there's cruelty. For another side, you see fantastic people with unbelievable bravery, with unbelievable generosity, who take burden of responsibility, who make difficult but right choices, who help each other, who rescue their life to help others whom they never met before. It's very difficult to live between these two contrasts. You just become crazy. And that is why the mood of people in Ukraine is always up and down, especially taking into account that what I personally can't get used to. I can't get used to the constant human losses of my friends, of my colleagues, of people who I don't know personally but admire their work. But my friend, Ukrainian writer, she once time told me that when we are down with our mood, we are not down. We are in emotional trenches. We are here just to retreat, to regroup, and to continue our fight. And what is not understandable for people abroad, that despite the mood, people in Ukraine will continue to do the right things.
Well, as I say, that is deeply humbling and challenging for all of us. And it makes us feel, once again, actually remind us all that we take so much for granted. And the courage and the dignity and the strength and tenacity of Ukraine is just astonishing, and has defied expectations over and over again. One of the points that you make often is the horrors that are occurring to Ukrainians inside the occupied territories. Those go largely, undiscussed because we can't see them, because there are no journalists. What, if anything, can we do to try and help you, support you in tackling that?
You can become our voice and help us to spread our message out. What do I mean? Recent months, we heard a lot about natural minerals, Russia's territorial claims, geopolitical interests, even about Zelensky's suit. But we didn't hear about people. We lost human dimension in this political process. And it's not okay, because we must find the answers to the very difficult questions. What will be with more than 20,000 Ukrainian children illegally deported to Russia? Children who were put in Russian re-education camps, told that they are not Ukrainian, they're Russian children, their families, their parents, their relatives refused from them, and they will be adopted by Russian families who will bring them up as Russians. What will be with thousands and thousands illegally detained civilians, men and women, as well as prisoners of the war subjected to horrible torture and ill-treatment and sexual abuse daily? I personally interviewed hundreds of people who survived Russian captivity. They told me horrible stories. I want to forget them one time if I can, because they told me how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes, their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled. There were electrical shocks through genitalia. Knowing this detail, you have a clear understanding that part of this people has no chance to be alive till the end of this peace talks. What will be with people in occupation in general? We speak about millions. Millions of people live in gray zone with no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their life, their children, their beloved ones. It's not okay to leave them alone for torture and death under Russian occupation. It's not human. In this war, we are fighting not just for Ukrainian territories. First and foremost, we are fighting for people who live there. Before I come into London, I met with a small girl in Kiev. She's approximately 5 years old. Her mother was illegally abducted when they live in occupied territories. and she was jailed. This girl didn't see her mother approximately for 3 years, but she still remembers her mother. And she hugged me, and she told that she's missing her mom. And in this moment, you feel frustration, because you don't have any tools how to get result just the near future to return her mom to her small daughter, especially knowing that this concrete woman went through the gang rape, because I read her testimonies, which she delivers through the independent lawyers to us. So you can become our voice. I'm not naive. I know that politicians are always transactional. They think about some interests, but I also know when people created a huge public demand, politicians can't ignore them.
Well, thank you for sharing the horror, the stories, and also your pain, because one of the problems today is the war has now gone on for 3 years, and the headlines are dominated by politicians and by numbers and by crazy statements, and it's just too easy to forget the horrific suffering that's going on that you are illuminating and encountering every day. So thank you for sharing the pain and basically exhorting us all to keep using our voices to talk about it. In terms of the children that have been abducted, the 20,000 or so, is there any sign of progress in getting them back? And people like Helena Kennedy and others have been very vocal about trying to keep the pressure up, but is that working? And is there anything else that we can do to try and get those children back?
It's a very sensitive problem for Ukrainian society, because for every nation, children is their future. And that is why Russia has stolen Ukrainian children, because Russia wants to erase our future at all. And when we speak about 20,000 Ukrainian children, it's just a tip of iceberg. We don't know the real number. We know just that this is a large-scale and systematic problem. This humanitarian research lab in Yale University, which unfortunately stopped your work because of cut of USAID funding, they identified more than 13,000 Ukrainian children. So the real number can be more and more. Only law provides predictability, but Russia ignores all provision of international law and all decisions of international organizations. That's why it's very difficult to solve this problem. The less of 1% of these people children were returned home. And what I want to say is that we have no time. Our greatest enemy is time, because children, they are very vulnerable of the erosion of their identity. They are very vulnerable to militarization. Russian adoptive families, they can change a name of a child, a place of birth, a date of birth. So even if these children have parents who are looking for them, who try to return them, if they have 2 or 3 years old, the longer they stay in Russia in this adoptive family, the less chance that their parents will return them finally. So the situation looks like this, that Russia continues occupation and deportation, children lose their childhood, we lose their children. But I don't want to end on the pessimist note. I will tell you one personal story. The story of my friend. She's a journalist. She's from one small city under occupation. I will not name it just for security issues. And in all schools under occupation, Ukrainian children are prohibited to speak Ukrainian language. their parents can be persecuted if they will express the Ukrainian identity or some sign of Ukrainian culture. They used Russian textbooks where Ukraine does not exist at all, and they start every day with singing Russian national anthem. And one child doesn't think, and the teacher asked the child, why you don't think the Russian national anthem? And the child responded, because I don't know words. And what's the problem? Told teacher, go home and learn by heart and then return. So next day, this teacher put this child in front of the whole class and ordered this child to think Russian national anthem. And instead of Russian national anthem, this child started to think Ukrainian national anthem. We know that Ukrainian children are under occupation, and we speak about 1,600,000. It's an enormous amount. That they provide peaceful resistance to occupiers. They made graffiti. They created a hidden book club to learn Ukrainian literature. They do hundreds of simple but very risky under occupation things. And this story, when my friend told it to me, we both were crying, because it's a story about our responsibility. While Ukrainian children being alone with Russian occupiers still have courage to resist, we, their parents, the adults, we have no moral rights to give up. We must do everything to save them.
I'm going to turn to the audience for questions now, but before I do, I want to ask you one question while you're all thinking about questions, which is, do you ever feel like giving up?
It's not my character. In my Facebook, long years ago, in the chapter where people wrote biography, I wrote 2 sentences, which like my life credo, life motto. The first sentence is, pessimism is a luxury which we can't afford by ourselves. And second sentence is, when your force will finish, you will be driven by your character.
I think that's once again a very powerful challenge to all of us, and a reminder that actually we do not have the luxury of simply turning away and getting lazy and giving up ourselves. We need to keep fighting. But let's take some questions, and it would be courteous but not compulsory to identify yourself, and please do keep them short. I see a question from Tony Borden. Right, Tony, tell us. Tell everyone else, if not me, who you are briefly. And
I can't resist. Tony Borden from the Institute for Peace Reporting. Oleksandra, thank you. I think people will already know why at a conference in Washington, Oleksandra was called the moral voice of her country, and you've shown it again. But having said that, maybe you could explain a little bit why you're really just the tip of the iceberg in your own right, that really what this story is about is the civil society and the resistance of the society of Ukraine as a whole, and how it has responded and really forged a nation and really come into its own. I think that is a story that is really the deeper story that really doesn't quite get told because it's so remarkable and hard to describe.
I will start answering this question with a personal story. I was in Paris, and my friend was driving me from French TV channel to the hotel. And she told me, did you notice how badly French drivers behave on the road? It's because of rain. And I asked, what will be if the snow will start? and she said that everything will be stopped. And I start laughing. I can't stand from laughing because it was January 2023. And I found myself in Kiev, in my flat, without heating, electricity, water, internet connection, and then even mobile connection will disappear. So I was laughing and I telling her, you're not preparing for blackouts. You're not preparing for blackouts. Nobody probably prepared for blackouts, and I know for sure that it's impossible to be prepared for the large-scale war, because it's a huge difference between knowing the thing and experience the thing. Even me, with all my experience, work on the field for documentation of war crimes for 8 years, understanding of international system, this knowledge which we exchange with human rights defenders from other countries in the world, I wasn't prepared for such enormous level of atrocity. So war probably is the most worst thing which just can happen in a human life. But in that January 2023, and now, since the first days of the large-scale invasion, I feel a huge wave of solidarity across the people. And when we had these blackouts, and nobody know what will be, because if 3 days in a row you have no electricity, then you have to evacuate the whole city because the battery will be blown up. You can't unfurl them. We see the millions of examples how people help each other. I remember I opened my chat of the house. I live in a multi-flat house, and neighbors wrote there that we have gas oven, so please come if you have electrical oven. You can cook, you can warm milk for your babies. Our doors are open. I remember the picture, and you can Google it very easily. It's a picture of a teacher. It's a woman sit on the street, very warmly clothed because it's winter, it's very cold. She sit on her knees, and she put the laptop on the metal stick, and she sit near some supermarket where there is generator and some Wi-Fi available, and she conducted online lectures. And when I saw this picture of woman sitting hours on her knees, conducting online lecture in a winter street, I told to myself, this is act of resistance, because she's fighting for the right of our children to have education, to conduct lessons in such circumstances. It's act of resistance. We know a lot of stories how ordinary farmers stolen Russian tanks and put them in a row, how ordinary doctors made sophisticated surgery in a basement with the candlelights, how ordinary people united to help each other. Probably I will finish with a story of my hairdresser. She told me that when large-scale war started, her brother, who for years has been living in Germany, made career there, created family, he returned to Ukraine. And because Russians didn't provide permission for International Committee of Red Cross to open green corridors to evacuate civilians, so ordinary people organized this evacuation under Russian fire. And her brother was severely injured during Russian shelling. He lost both legs. His German colleagues found a way how to transport him to Germany, and he was going for a long, long period of very painful rehabilitation. And my hairdresser, she told, as a sister, for sure she didn't want her brother to return to Kiev, to left his job, his family in Germany. But among those people whom he rescued, it was one family with a small boy. His name is Dmitrik. And she told me that every day the small boy sent the messages to her brother, wishing recovery and other kind things. And she told that, I told to my brother that I'm so grateful that you saved Dmitrik and his parents. I think that dramatic times provide us an opportunity to express the best in us. And when you commit such very simple acts of resistance to conduct lessons during blackout, or you save people whom you never met before, only at that moment you are acutely aware what does it mean to be human.
Well, that is a sentiment I think many of us, once again, would feel very humbled by. I was already struck in my trips to Kiev by the fact that the trains are still running so extraordinarily punctually in a way that puts British Rail to shame, which is not hard, but, and I remember once asking one of the people who was in charge of the railways, you know, how is it that in a war your trains are performing so much better than British trains? And he said it's an act of resistance to keep living and keep maintaining the core functions that make a civilized society and keep believing that this matters. And these stories of extraordinary heroism by ordinary Ukrainians are just majestic. And the tragedy is, it's taken such horror for us to appreciate this. I know that we are almost out of time. Can I quickly ask the organisers if we can go on for a few minutes, or one or two more? Okay, so let's take the two in the front row who are looking super keen. And we'll take them both together. Keep them short, please, and briefly give your name.
My name is Jeremy Kaplan. I'm a fellow here. Very quick question. You've talked so much and so beautifully about humanity. Do you believe there is humanity in Russian people? And if so, what is the best way to try and ignite it and have some form of action from inside Russia amongst the people?
So can we reach out to what is hopefully the humanity inside Russia today and see whether we can do anything? And yeah.
Ursula Woolley, and I'm the chair of the Ukrainian Institute in London. I'm also a fellow here at the RSA. If you don't mind telling us a bit about how you feel now about the psychology of testimonial after you've worked on it at least since 2014, and how you're feeling about that now, how it is so important politically and it's so important legally, and whether people are wanting to share now at this stage in the war. What's your perspective on that?
On psychology of what?
Oh, testimonial.
Testimonial.
People giving their testimony about what's happened, which is so painful and traumatic, so necessary to build legal cases, but what is the feeling today about people giving testimonials?
Thank you for your questions. Putin governed his country not just with repressions and censorship, but with a special social contract between Kremlin's elite and Russian people. And the problem is that this contract is based on so-called Russian glory. And the problem is that majority of Russians still see their glory in forcible restoration of Russian empire. It's hard to explain, but they really think that they have right to invade another country, to kill people there, to erode their identity, to take their children. This is imperial way of thinking, and it's explained a lot because the way how we see the world is define our actions and our decisions. Unfortunately, it's not the war of one man. It's a war of Russian people. And here, I want to emphasize that among these people, there are my friends and colleagues, Russians, human rights defenders, who found themselves in unbelievable pressure and danger, because they face not just with repression from regime, but against the all public opinion. And they continue their work to defend people and human dignity in situation when the law doesn't work, and they can be jailed, tortured, sexually abused, and killed themselves. You know that Russian human rights organizations are banned in Russia, and part of my colleagues had to leave Russia, part of them were jailed, part of them still work with us on a daily basis. We have thousands and thousands illegally detained people, and for us, the only way to identify where they are, if it's possible, to provide some medicine, to send independent lawyer, if it's possible, who can't change a lot, but at least provide information what's happened with this. All the things which literally save people's life, it's possible only because of bravery of my Russian human rights colleagues. And that's why I want to emphasize, because I think it's very important example when the majority lost the ability to make distinction between evil and good. Still there are people who have bravery, who have honesty, who has moral ground. And I will answer your question with their words, because I asked them once, how I can help you? Because you live in such difficult situation. And they answer, if you want to help us, please be successful. Because success of Ukraine provides a chance for democratic future of Russia itself. Only success of Ukraine provides this chance. Chance is not a guarantee, but there are no guarantee in all our life. It's a huge luxury to have a chance. And according to your question, if I understand you correctly, millions of people in Ukraine are suffering, because even knowing what's going on can traumatize you. I remember on the day when Russian rocket deliberately hit the biggest children's hospital in Kiev, where children were treated from oncology, I was running late to one working meeting just 3 hours after it was happened, and I ordered the taxi, and the driver told me, here are the napkins. And I said, thank you, but I think I need napkins. And he told me, 2 passengers before you, they were crying in my taxi because of this hit of children's hospital. So when we have millions of people in pain, you have to find another way how to do something with mental health, because you can't provide for millions of people individual psychologists. It's impossible. So what we are doing, we conducting different programs, how to provide basic psychological education for people, what they can do if they feel themselves bad or they see that other people need some help. We also discussing with artists, with philosophers, with writers, how to create a new tradition, new culture, new rituals, which provide us an opportunity to transfer this pain into energy which enabling life. And I think that despite everything, Ukrainians are much more resilient than we even think about ourselves.
Well, I think your talk has indicated the truth of that. Your resilience and your determination to speak out for Ukraine has been remarkable. But Ukraine's resilience as a society has been absolutely awe-inspiring, and it does not give any of us the luxury of giving up or not speaking out. We can all stand challenged and join your fight. So thank you very much indeed for your thoughts, and I believe that Harry now wishes to say a few words to conclude the evening. So thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you to the RSA and the events team who have helped bring together today. It's always a great honour coming back here. I'm very proud of being an RSA fellow with the amount of support Andy Haldane in particular has showed for Ukraine. And I think all of the fellows, we are a good group of people and certainly Ukrainophiles, I would say. I'd also like to thank the UIL. I've learnt an awful lot from you, Olesya, over the course of time, and I suspect there is still much more to learn. I hope that one day in future we find you to be the person who opens the first Ukrainian Institute London location at some point, and just well done for all of the work you do. And Gillian, thank you for coming down. And no, well, it was an extraordinary for you to make such an effort, particularly when it sounds like difficult things have happened in the college today, and well done.
Frankly, the reason I was here was because I feel so strongly about trying to support the work of Oleksandra, and frankly, anything we have in our daily lives is absolutely minimal, nothing to what's happened.
Well said. Oleksandra, so I first saw you 2.5 years ago at the Cambridge Union, where you gave an impassioned speech. Little did I think at that point in time that I would have the opportunity 2.5 years later, and the honour 2.5 years later, to share a stage with you and support you on what has been an absolutely phenomenal advocacy trip across the United Kingdom. I think we are made all the stronger in our support of Ukraine by having your presence in this country. You are inspirational, and I think you represent so many of the things that I see best in Ukrainian people: the strength, the honour, the dignity, and the understanding of, I think, the values that we stand for in the West, which is freedom, individualism, and community. So thank you. You are an inspiration. I am not a lawyer. I am an engineer. I think I maybe, as of this week, could call myself an inventor for the first time, which is a great joy. I invented a new type of emergency replacement window, of which we have installed over 50,000 across the front line of the war in Ukraine. These windows provide warmth, light, and safety and hope to over 15,000 homes, hospitals, schools, administrative centres, even, starting from this week, skyscrapers. But this evening is not about Insulate Ukraine. It is not about my work. It is about Ukraine more widely and what we can do to support this extraordinary country. In my time in Ukraine, I have only seen Russian aggression grow worse, or maybe I have only just begun to understand what you have been going through for 15 years. I suspect the latter is more true. But to me, it seems to have grown more barbaric. I returned from Ukraine last week, and during my time there in this latest trip, there were hundreds of drones, missiles, FPVs, raining down on Ukrainian cities on a daily basis. So many that it is difficult to sleep at night. Just yesterday, whilst Oleksandra was meeting the king, I received a message from one of our team. A hospital in which we have installed over 150 windows in Semenivka was again hit by a drone. Windows were shattered and fortunately no one was killed, but it does often happen. Our operation in Kherson, we receive over 40 calls a day of people requesting our windows, direct inbound calls. We are now no longer able to respond to over 70% of those calls. That is because our team, when responding, are attacked themselves by drones in what has now been called or coined the Kherson Safari. I'm very proud to say that we do have a response for this, which I won't talk about this evening, but please do follow us, because we are going to outthink the Russians with this one, I think. The reality is none of the Ukrainians that I speak to think that peace is that close. I think we kid ourselves a little bit in this country when we talk about peace, particularly over the head of Ukrainians, and they are the ones who know best. It could, and I suspect it might well end up being, a long time before we see peace in Ukraine. The humanitarian need is great. It's enormous, and the road may be very, very long. Facing such a challenge, I think it can be very daunting to know how to tackle this and where to start. There are children's, veterans, hospitals, infrastructure, human rights, drones, you name it, it's a problem. So we wanted to ask the question of how you can help, how you can continue supporting Ukraine into the future. One route might be to donate alongside a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And so with this, I'm very pleased to announce this evening a new managed collection of grassroots charities that are supporting Ukraine and will continue to support Ukraine for the long term. On your seats, and I hope later we will post it on the YouTube channel, you will find a card. And on that card, if you visit the link ukraineshortlist.com, you will find a list of Ukrainian grassroots organizations having an outsized difference within their various fields in Ukraine. These charities need your support not just today, but potentially for a very long time. And so we would appreciate if you consider a monthly recurring donation to these organizations, something that gives them the consistency and the certainty to be able to plan into the future. You can enable them to do better work. Our goal over the next year is going to be to generate over £100,000 in monthly recurring donations through Oleksandra's shortlist. We cannot get there without your support and the support of others you know in the Ukrainian community. Please do consider this evening, before you go to bed, or before you even leave this building, beginning to set up a monthly recurring donation. It literally takes 2 minutes. I tried it with Tally the other day. If you've been inspired by Oleksandra, I would appreciate if you consider to go further and extend that support. Help her to help these organizations. Please help Ukraine. As a final thanks to you and to all of the fantastic work you do, and to the time you've spent supporting your country, we are going to be providing a copy to everyone in the room of this book. It is Victoria Amelina, Looking at Women, Looking at War.
Probably I will tell a little bit about Victoria. She was my friend. She was young, very talented Ukrainian writer, and she joined our work to fight for justice. We was together with Victoria here in London in June 2022, speaking to British Parliament. So London is a special place for me and for Victoria. This book was unfinished because Victoria was killed by Russian missiles in Kramatorsk during one of her field missions. She accompanied the group of Colombian writers to the east. So frankly speaking, I haven't read this book. It's still very painful for me. In this book, you can find stories of incredible Ukrainian women from different fields of society. Ukrainian women who joined armed forces, Ukrainian women who document war crimes, Ukrainian women who take important political decisions, Ukrainian women who coordinate huge civil initiatives. This book is about one important thing, that bravery has no gender. And I will be very glad to present this book to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Yaku. Well, this is a very, very inspiring book indeed, and once again, should challenge us of whatever gender. Thank you.
Thanks.
As a last point, so if you would like a copy of the book, please just leave your email and your phone number on the way out this evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being such great friends of Ukraine. And thank you, a final thank you to Oleksandra and Gillian for a fantastic evening.